Okay, Sandra, can you hear us now? Yeah. So I think we had a little bit of a problem with the audio. Okay, good. Thank you, G. So Gore and I, Sandra, are joining us. Let me just real quick start over again. So you're welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello in the breach on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff, particularly on YouTube. If you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button and the little bell, that helps us tremendously to get our message out there and to gain more subscribers. We have a GoFundMe campaign going, and you can find us on GoFundMe at Support the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Many people have been very generous. Of course, the greatest support you could give us is to keep us in your prayers. And before we want to go into it, a little shameless plug for one of our friends, the Angry Catholic. See that, Joe?
Nice.
Paul and Kristen Chiacha, they're friends of the show. We've been on their show. They've been on our show. They just got a gig on the radio, and we're probably going to be on with them over the course of the next month or so. But angrycatholic.com. And they have a great show. They get phenomenal guests, Jesse Ramiro, Joseph Chiambra, a whole host of people. They've been highlighted by Michael Boris over at Church Militant. So Angry Catholic, because that's what Joe and I are. All right, we're angry Catholics. We got reason to be. And we're gonna get into it in our first story. All right. And it's not just of interest to Catholics. I think it's of interest to all people of goodwill, because we obviously disagree on theology. However, we do have overlap. We have common cause, particularly when it comes to the attacks in this country on the moral law, on the natural law, all the nonsense that's going on. So, but particularly, there was a publication that wrote an article recently that Joe and I wanted to get into on this show that we think will interest you. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe Resinello.
The National Catholic Reporter, as I like to call it, the National Catholic Distorter, recently ran a piece called AOC is the Future of the Catholic Church. I think this is very confusing. I actually think it's scandalous. Why is that? AOC, three points, and then we're going to break down the actual story itself. AOC is a baptized Catholic. We should pray for her, clearly. But AOC is not a practicing Catholic. And why do I say that? Based on three basically positions that she takes. One, she is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. You cannot be a socialist and be Catholic. The Catholic Church has condemned socialism for hundreds and hundreds of years. Look it up if you don't believe me. Second of all, AOC is for abortion. You cannot be Catholic and for abortion. The two do not meet. It's like oil and water. And thirdly, she is for same-sex marriage. So AOC, frankly, because she's a public figure, brings scandal to the Catholic Church, and good Catholics should speak out against this particular article. To say she's the future of the Catholic Church, well, maybe she is if she had a conversion like St. Paul, but I do think it's very confusing. I think it appeals to either low information Catholics or, frankly, Catholics that aren't catechized. Again, these are not my positions. Look them up. Read them for yourself.
I'll tell you what, though, my criticism is not so much for AOC. Okay, the reason why I sent the story to Joe originally because I wanted to talk about it is the criticism should be pointed towards the National Catholic Distorter, and they've been told, by the way, that to take Catholic by the bishops to take Catholic out of their name. They don't listen. All right, but having said that, Heidi Schlumpf wrote an article, and Joe just told you the title of it. AOC is the future of the Catholic Church. Now she was responding. There was an incident in the House of Representatives where Representative what's his name, Ted Yoho, who's also Catholic, okay, who's a practicing Catholic, okay. He used some foul language. Again, I'm not going to excuse that, but he did not direct it at AOC. But AOC went on the floor of the House and basically said that he did. He denied it, and guess what? I know this cheese is off the left. I believe him. I don't believe her. Remember during Kavanaugh, I believe her. I believe her. I believe him, okay? Because he wouldn't do that. He did say he shouldn't use that language, but he made it clear he was not directing that at her. But Heidi Schlumpf then takes the opportunity, because AOC gives this 10-minute speech on the floor of the House And Heidi Schlump is saying, I can't believe how often she's referencing Catholic values. There's nothing Catholic about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Joe just just outlined 3 different positions. Now, I don't care what the Catholic left says. Pope Leo XIII, 40 years later, Pope Pius XI, 50 years later, Pope St. John Paul II, all under no uncertain terms, in 3 papal encyclicals, condemned communism and socialism. It is in the compendium, the social compendium of the Catholic Church. Condemnation of socialism and communism is part of the 150-year social compendium of the Catholic Church. It's that simple. You can't be for socialism, and there's a variety of reasons why. You could go into systematic atheism. I think that would be first and foremost. Socialists and communists are atheists. They're atheistic in their view. They're materialistic in their view. The church obviously condemns materialism, whether it's capitalism or whether it's socialism. The church doesn't take that view of history. So there's that. There's the assault on private property. You don't have the right to private property in a socialist or communist system. The church, because God recognizes your right to private property, the church recognizes your right to private property. And so there's a number of different things. But the way Heidi Schlump is making it seem as though AOC is representing and espousing Catholic values on the floor of the House, and Ted Yoho, well, he's one of those evil Republicans. Don't you get it? He's one of those evil conservatives. So he can't be Catholic. You know what I mean?
No, but it's just, like I said, it's confusing to people, particularly because of her positions. And I think as Catholics, we have to basically bring truth to darkness. We have to bring things to the light. And this, again, I think what she's doing potentially is appealing to low information Catholics, as well as, again, Catholics who aren't catechized properly. Sadly, many Catholics for many generations, well, probably at least 3, haven't been catechized correctly in the United States. I think that's something we all have to work at. I think this is something we all have to, do our job at in terms of educating people and standing for the truth. And that's what we're trying to do tonight with the story.
And that's, yes, exactly. That's what we're doing. So can we break it down a little bit?
Sure.
Let's get into a little bit, because these are some misconceptions about the church that Joe and I, quite frankly, are a little bit tired of, because when people like the National Catholic Reporter and Heidi Schlump and the people that work for that a leftist rag of an organization say things, like Joe said, those who just out of sheer ignorance, that's not an insult. That's just ignorance. Ignorance just meaning you don't possess particular knowledge. You're ignorant of certain things. I'm ignorant of certain things. So, but just out of ignorance, I might say, well, that sounds good, right? So the first thing, of course, is don't use foul language. Okay. So she wants to blast Yoho because he used foul language. And again, he said clearly it was not directed at AOC. But listen to this. Here's Schlump. Okay, this is point number 1 that we want to just real quickly get into. As I listened to her 10-minute address on the House floor, I was struck by how often it referenced Catholic values. Ocasio-Cortez repeatedly railed against now get this in light of what Joe just said earlier. Ocasio-Cortez repeatedly railed against the dehumanizing of others and instead called for treating people with dignity and respect. Okay, let's on the surface say, that's a true statement. Does that extend, Ms. Schlump, to the protection of unborn babies in the womb? Or are you just A-OK with AO's position that where the law allows the slaughter of babies in the womb? Because let's face it, there's nothing more dehumanizing than what happens to a baby in the womb in modern America. They are dehumanized, number 1, just like Jews during the Holocaust and just like Africans during the slave trade. They're dehumanized and then they're victimized and they're killed. So what dignity and respect is Ms. Schlump talking about?
Well, I think what she's doing is she's referring to things that are basically open to our prudential judgment. There are certain issues that are intrinsic evils. This is not my words. These are the words of the bishop. You could look at a 1998 piece that they published. Again, these are intrinsic evils: same-sex marriage, abortion. There were 5, actually, not to get into them all because this is not the point of this segment. However, abortion is an intrinsic evil. AOC stands with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is unabashedly for abortion all the way up to the minute that a child is born. They are for third trimester abortions.
And that's not an exaggeration, because we know, as we covered on the show,
fact.
Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, said even if the baby's born, the baby still doesn't have a right to his or her own life. So we're not putting words in their mouth, are they? Are we?
Again, you know, as it stands, while AOC is a baptized Catholic, and the seeds of baptism are constantly working within all of us, she has made a choice, as we all make choices. We make choices in life. Grace works upon our actions. St. Thomas Aquinas said that. It's the will and God's grace working together. They have to cooperate. We have to cooperate with God's grace. She has made a choice. And again, I'm not judging her. I'm stating facts based upon her positions.
Mm-hmm.
She, as it stands, she's not the future of the Catholic Church unless she changes. She's a young woman, and maybe she will change, and God willing, she will, and I'll pray for her.
But she won't be a Democrat anymore.
Well,
In other words, if you convert, I'm sorry. Yes, people say, well, you got to keep politics and religion separate. No, politics and religion are going hand in hand. Okay? When you support these grave evils, these intrinsic evils, like the Democrat Party does, I'm sorry, you can't repent as a Catholic and still be a Democrat. I don't understand it. And I don't care how judgmental that sounds. That party, if it once was a moderate party, is no longer a moderate party. When Joe and I grew up, we had politicians like Buddy Fortunato, who we've done an interview with. He's the publisher of the Italian Tribune, okay, over here in New Jersey. Buddy was a Democrat back in the day. Buddy is not a Democrat now, because he understands that that party, in other words, that he once belonged to in the 1970s, okay, is no, like we say all the time, that is not the party as it stands today. Same with Peter Rodino, who was our congressman back in the day in New Jersey. Peter Rodino wouldn't be in the Democrat Party right now. There's many Italians that were Democrats that are no longer Democrat. Sorry, these are people who have their head on straight, say that party does not represent my values.
It's funny because I just read something today, actually. Cecile Richards, who's the ex-CEO of Planned Parenthood, basically made a statement, and she said, if you are not for abortion, you are not welcome in the Democratic Party.
Good.
I'm just saying, like,
Good.
It's that cut and dry.
When, Joe, are the 22 million pro-life Democrats? They are self-described Democrats for life. Kristen Day runs that organization. We mention them all the time because we are trying to get Kristen Day on this show. When are they going to realize? When are they going to realize that party has told those 22 million people you're no longer welcome? Can I give you an answer to that question? They're going to realize it when the Republicans start acting like Donald Trump, start caring about blue-collar workers, start caring about wages, start caring about destroying globalism and putting America first and American workers. When the Republican Party officially adopts that position, okay, and maybe moderates a couple of others, guess what? Those pro-life Democrats who've been told to leave by not just Cecile Richards, all right, Tom Perez has told them that. Andrew Cuomo told people if you're pro-life and you're against gay marriage, get out of New York. All right, they are telling you to leave. The problem is they have nowhere to go because the Republicans are not giving them a place, because we still have that Mitt Romney image, whereas we should have the Donald Trump image, where Donald Trump actually does care about workers. Okay, and so that's very important. And those that you know, these people, there are huge. I don't know what the Democrats are thinking, to be honest with you. How do you not even moderate a little bit to try, to get those people to vote for you? I can
remember Starbucks, Schultz, when he was the CEO of Starbucks, he basically said, if you are for marriage between a man and a woman and you do not basically have an open mind with regard to same-sex marriage, he said this straight out, don't drink our coffee.
Well, I haven't for years now.
And frankly, I'm glad you said that, because I won't.
Well, at least he's got some stones to back it up by saying to people, in other words, hey, if you're for this, don't drink my coffee. So at least I respect him, because guess what? He's willing to lose market share. Now, I'm one guy. I did for a while. I used to like their double espresso.
I like their coffee.
Right.
But again, this is where, if you ask me, it's a foolish business decision to mix politics and business when you're a CEO of a company. When it comes to Cecile Richards, she's clearly an extension. The Planned Parenthood is an extension of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But again, getting back to this article, this is a Catholic, quote-unquote Catholic periodical, a National Catholic Reporter. It's not a good periodical. It confuses people. You see, this is, again, what we have to keep our eye out for. That's why we're bringing it up tonight on this show. It's a confusing article. Clearly, Alexandria, her values don't represent the Catholic Church. With regard to the teachings of the Catholic Church, I don't even know how you could possibly make that argument. And again, because she's a public figure, she brings scandal to the church. Yep. Frankly, the church should be more vocal, not to point fingers at any bishop specifically, but the church should be more vocal when one of their children, and she is a child of God, she is baptized, makes statements and holds positions as she does. And many people within the Democratic Party, Joe Biden being another one, who has embraced positions that are viewed, I'll say it again, they are intrinsic evil.
That's right.
Abortion is an intrinsic evil. This is not my word. These are not my words. These are the church's words. And that goes so far as for us with regard to voting. This is something Joe and I have basically said since we started our show 2 years ago. You cannot be a practicing Catholic and support politicians that are for abortion and same-sex marriage. I'm sorry. You cannot. You could rationalize it any which way you want.
Right.
I'm not judging you. I'm not God. And frankly, you're not going to stand in front of me when you die. But what I am telling you, and sadly, not enough people within the church say this, but there are voices in it that do. If you look for them, you will find them.
Right. They're definitely out there. Let's go to another point real quick. So this is, again, Heidi Schlumpf. Okay. By the way, I sent her an email. Joe got a kick out of this. So I sent Heidi Schlumpf an email when this article came out. And her email's on there, and I was kind of respectful. I mean, you all tell me. I don't know. There's a lot of you in the chat room right now. We're going across about 15 different platforms tonight, thanks to Holy Faith Media and Jonathan Ross up in Canada. So we have a software we're getting. Our audience has grown exponentially just over the last month or so. But you tell me. I sent her an email, and I basically said, Heidi, I'm one half of a podcast and radio show called The Frontline with Joe and Joe. I'm just wondering what Catholic values AOC represents. Would it be the value of supporting baby slaughter in the womb? You could come on the show and discuss if you like. So I got a response from Ms. Schlumpf, and she said, Dear Joe, thanks for the offer. I think I'll pass. I was like, okay. I'm really shocked about that. Well, real quick, because we don't want to stay, we have a few more topics to talk about, but there was a couple of points, Joe, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to go because Joe mentioned a very good thing, confusion. I would love to think in my mind, and I think we do a pretty good job when Joe and I open our big, fat Italian mouths, that we're speaking the truth and we're trying to end any confusion there might be so that nobody's going to listen to Heidi Schlumpf, or at least they know that she is a dissident Catholic. Here's another one. Quote, Catholic references are not surprising, since the rock star millennial leader of the left grew up Catholic and even wrote about her faith influences her views on public policy such as mass incarceration. Now, here's what I would tell you, Ms. Schlumpf. If there's a problem with incarceration, as there probably is in America, you know who's dealt with that fairly effectively? Not your people in the Democrat Party. Joe Biden, he signed the criminal justice legislation in the 90s that Bill Clinton proposed. So the Democrats were all on board for that. You know who signed criminal justice reform? Donald J. Trump. You hear that, Ms. Schlumpf? Donald J. Trump said we have a problem. There's too many African Americans in prison, and they're being overly sentenced. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. He let that one woman out. He pardoned her. Okay, I forgot her name. African American, middle-aged African American woman. All right. So who cares about prisoners? I think Donald Trump does, Ms. Schlumpf. AOC's not going to do anything about it. Her party's not going to do anything. What they'll say is defunding the police. That's how you're going to deal with mass incarceration. I mean, that's one of their talking points, right, Joe?
Well, like I said, it's all things, when you talk about points, like I just said previously, it's prudential judgment. We could have a discussion on certain things like incarceration, with regard to, what she quote unquote, dehumanizing others with regard to our words, with regard to what we write. We could have an open discussion. There's some things that are not open to debate. And that's what the National Catholic Reporter isn't properly communicating. This is what Heidi Schlumpf does not understand, sadly. Or she does understand and she's ignoring it. Too many people who are Catholic, are Christian, choose to ignore certain things. Teachings in the Bible, teachings in the church. That's not a proper view of religion. Do we all do things perfectly? No, I don't. But we have to aspire to do them. We have to believe them. When we turn our head away from a teaching of God, basically what we're doing is we become God. We're choosing what's right, what's wrong. That was the original sin.
It's called pride.
That was the sin of Adam and Eve. God said, don't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We're then determining what's right and what's wrong. That's what Heidi Schlumpf is doing. That's what AOC is doing. That's what Joe Biden is doing.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're bringing it up.
Yeah, and it's important to bring it up, again, to dispel any confusion. I want to make one more point on this, and then we'll move forward. But I do want to thank Dennis. Dennis is checking in. Her name was Alice Marie Johnson. That was the woman that Donald Trump pardoned. Okay? Thank you for that, Dennis. We appreciate that. And yeah, so the bad man, Orange Man Bad, okay? He's the one who signed criminal justice reform, and that's why we have a race war in the street that was manufactured by the left, because 25 to 30%, particularly among young African Americans, really like Donald Trump. The older African Americans are like the old Italians. They don't want to hear about Republicans. The younger ones, by the way, one of those young ones, Joe and I are interviewing tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern time, and we're going to put it on our page. Bevelyn Beatty. Now, she is a young African American pro-life conservative. And she's got a great video online where she's berating one of these guilty white liberal women, telling her, just reading her the Riot Act. You could see that. But that interview we'll be doing tomorrow, and it'll be broadcast this week. But I want to make one more point. This is one that's near to my heart, Joe, because I've been talking about this for years. This was one of the criticisms, by the way, that Ms. Schlumpf had for Representative Yoho. Catch this now. Yoho voted for Trump tax cuts in 2017. Oh, he's Satan. He's Satan. You want to know what the National Catholic Reporter do? And then we'll move on. The National Catholic Reporter is a leftist rag that tries to convince you that if you want to actually keep the vast majority of your money, or perhaps you don't agree with the personal income tax, you think of it as an immoral tax, as I do. I'm not expecting Joe to agree with me on that. I think that personal income tax needs to be abolished, okay, because I think it's the theft of our labor. But Heidi Schlumpf measures compassion by how much money you're willing to let the government take out of your paycheck. And if you want a tax cut, you're an immoral person. You know what you are, Joe? You're deplorable.
But you know what?
You're deplorable.
It comes down to this. Our Lord says very clearly that we have to give to the poor. What you do to the least, you do to me. However, that does not necessarily mean you have to give the money to the government and they're the middleman. You see, our Lord will judge us according to what we do to the least of our brothers and sisters. That's in Gospel of Matthew. It's very clear. That's the final judgment. Again, Catholicism and Christianity, for the most part, it's painting by numbers. You read it. It's all written down. You either believe it or you don't. However, what I give to the government, frankly, the government gives to Planned Parenthood. I don't want to give money.
I don't want to give money to that.
Parenthood. They also do other things that I don't necessarily believe as a practicing Catholic. So when she draws this comparison of being a bad Catholic because I don't want to give my tax dollars to the United States government, or as much of my tax dollars as they're requiring currently, I don't think that's a fair measure. What I will be measured upon is, do I share? Do I share and not just the crumbs that are left over? You see, again, this is how God will judge us. I mean, it comes down to that.
Do you remember in 2012, I want to just piggyback on that point you're making. You remember in 2012, the question arose, because I don't like Mitt Romney. Joe and I don't really like Mitt Romney. We really wish he would just leave politics. We've had enough of the establishment Republican Mitt Romneys. Would you agree with me on that? But I will say that. I will say this. The question arose about Romney's tax returns, and it showed that the man gave a ton of money to charity. Personally, it was on his tax return. Now, we're not going to begrudge him for that because I would applaud that. It was personal money, earnings, vast earnings, but earnings that he gave to charity. You know what Biden's response to that was back in 2012? Or his defenders, I should say, because they pointed out in Joe Biden's tax returns, it showed that he gave like 0.3% of his income to charity. Well, he supports policies that support the poor. That's not charity. Taking other people's money to support your programs, that's not charity. Charity comes right from here. And when it comes from here, that means it comes from here in your pocket. Romney at least gave of his wealth. Joe Biden, as we found out now recently because of his son in China and everything else, Joe Biden's probably a very, very rich guy. You know what his attitude is? I support the poor through my government policies. So I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. That is the view of people like the National Catholic Reporter. So
Well,
I'm glad
many Democrats feel that way. I've heard that too. They basically say, taxes are the rent that you pay for being in the United States. To some degree, I agree with that. I mean, we have to pay taxes. You have to pay street cleaners. You have to pay police. You have to pay teachers. But let's be honest. Some of the programs of the United States government, you might as well take that money and set it on fire.
Yeah, it's useless.
Absolutely.
Doesn't do any good.
Positively does not help a single solitary person.
I was going to say the person it helps the least is the poor person. There, we talked about, and we're going to talk about it with Bevel and Beatty tomorrow about how the Democrat Party. No, that's fine. About how the Democrat Party has basically been running a plantation for all these decades in the inner cities. Notice Joe and I grew up in Newark. We saw it firsthand. So I think it was a good conversation to have because we have to dispel any notion that anybody right now in the Democrat Party represents anything remotely resembling not just Catholic values, but any sort of adherence to the moral law in a more general sense, or the natural law in a more general sense. These people are devoid of morality. Yet, at the same time, and then we'll move on. They try to make it seem like you're the one who's the evil person. You're the one who's deplorable because you don't agree with us, and that's the way it is. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. Like I said, thanks to Jonathan Ross for going across about 15 different platforms right now. There's so many people in the chat room, so if I miss you, I apologize. But Goranai's here, Sandra's here, Barbara from Wisconsin. Hi, Barbara. You got Charlie, my man from the Bronx. Jonathan, Edward, what's happening? Jonathan's with us, Jonathan Carter. We also have Timothy, says, I'll never vote for Joe Biden. Amen, Timothy.
Good.
Ian, the book peddler, Arvin. Thanks for being with us, Arvin, Nicholas. And yeah, so we got Jack is with us. Dennis Demenis. I like Dennis. Dennis is cool. And yeah, Ann is with us from Connecticut. Anthony Basil. What's up, Basil? All right. And yeah, we got a bunch of other people with us right now. And David Tornatore is with us. Pelosi and Biden are you use the word disgrace, David. I use the word disgrazia. Because that's what they are. Anyway, follow us on Facebook and YouTube and like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And where we headed next, Joe Resinello?
We're going to talk a little bit about Tucker Carlson. He made some very interesting comments with regard to Barack Obama this week, who eulogized Representative John Lewis, who passed at his funeral. Basically, what in that eulogy, this is a quote from Obama, and we could talk a little bit about that. Then I want to get to Carlson's comments because I think they're very important. This is a segment of what Obama said in the eulogy. He said, by ending some of the partisanship gerrymandering so that all voters have the power to choose their politicians, not the other way around, and if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do. Okay, first of all, and this is what Carlson kind of focuses on, this is a funeral. This is not the Democratic convention. This is a shame what took place at that funeral. That's number one with regard to Obama making these statements. Secondly, what does the filibuster, which we covered last week on our show on the Crusade channel, have to do with Jim Crow laws?
Right.
I don't even, for the life of me, I can't even understand how he could wed the two ideas. The filibuster
is 200 years old.
I don't even know.
It's part of our
tradition.
tradition.
It's just sad. It's just sad.
It's racist. It's racist to require 60 votes. Okay, so you know what he's pissed off about? Let's call it the way it is. Obamacare was supposed to be even more severe than it was. And it was only because the Senate required 60 votes to get it passed. So they wound up getting some wishy-washy Republicans in there who shouldn't have voted for any of it. And he's mad because he wasn't able to get everything he wanted in Obamacare. Barack, Barry, listen, that's the point of the filibuster. As Tucker Carlson pointed out, it makes things move slow.
And
you get it?
It also requires compromise. That's the idea.
Debate. Joe, there's a naughty, naughty word. You used a naughty, naughty word. I used a naughty, naughty word. Debate. Is that such a bad thing?
But also,
that's
like
what the filibuster
Jim Crow,
does. Jim Crow.
He's feeding this race war that the Democratic Party has basically contrived for their political advantage, because they know that there is the largest percentage of the African American vote in the history of America for a Republican president currently supporting Donald Trump.
That's right.
And that is why they are beating this drum to death.
And he used a funeral. You talk about disgraceful. Now, look, Joe and I have made it clear. There is a distinction between John Lewis, the civil rights icon. All right, that's an overused word, but let's use it for now. Icon, and John Lewis, the representative from Georgia. Okay, and quite frankly, I have no use for John Lewis, the representative from Georgia. He got cracked in the skull on the bridge in Alabama. All right, I think it was in Alabama, one of the marches. Okay, one of the civil rights marches to fight against injustice. That John Lewis and those actions, I applaud. The John Lewis who voted 52 times to support baby slaughter in the womb, I do not. Now, having said that, do we as Catholic men pray for his soul? Absolutely. But Barack Obama takes the occasion of his funeral to, again, try to call the rest of the country racist and deplorable.
And by the way, you mentioned that John Lewis, and I don't want to disgrace the dead, but we'll just talk about all African Americans that support abortion through voting for the Democratic Party. You do realize that this is the largest killer of African Americans. If you combine murder, AIDS, everything, put it all in a
disease,
bucket.
yep.
The abortion targets the African American population more so than any population in the country. This is a fact.
Right.
This is something we're going to be covering with Bevelyn tomorrow in our interview, and she agrees with us too, by the way.
Aren't they fulfilling Margaret Sanger's vision?
Correct.
Okay, Margaret Sanger specifically. Now, let's be fair about Margaret Sanger. She was never for abortion, but what's the difference? We're pointing out the fact that the woman was a racist. So she championed contraception and sterilization because she wanted to limit the population of black and brown people, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Okay, but given enough time, she would have been totally fine with abortion. So there's no question about that. But even so, the organization she founded was founded on racist ideas. Real quick, Kathleen's checking in from Erie, PA. Hey, Kathleen, what's happening? So yeah, and IER can. Hey, what's up, brother or sister? We can't tell. But it's very disgusting. But it's typical of Barack Obama and political opportunists like him, because that's what he is, a political opportunist, okay? John Lewis dies, let me call the rest of the country racist. That's what he would. Jim Crow, filibuster represents a Jim Crow relic. When I said this last week on the show, in other words, Antonin Scalia told the French the one time, no, it's deliberate. This is the way America works. We don't act on our passions. If we want to pass legislation, particularly you have to have the Senate. You got to get 60 votes in the Senate because you need debate. See, the passions of the people are represented in the House of Representatives. With the filibuster, what you do is reason then takes over passion. And the reasonable people, the adults in the room are supposed to sit down and, like you said, they're supposed to have a conversation, supposed to have dialogue, debate, compromise, all of it. And guess what? If you don't get 60 votes,
you don't go.
You don't go.
You don't go to the show.
And it's worked very, very well for the last 200 years. Now, I would say this, okay, and you tell me if you agree. Mitch McConnell should grab Chuck Schumer in a room, and he should say to him straight up, he should say, you better end this talk about doing away with the filibuster now, because if you keep it up, if in fact the Senate stays Republican, on November 4th, I'm going to do away with the filibuster. And we are going to pass every piece of legislation we want with a simple majority. So get it straight, Chuck Schumer. You're making a bet that the Senate goes Democrat. If it doesn't, and you persist in this, and you don't come out publicly and say, no, we're against doing away with the filibuster, watch out on November 4th, buddy. Because now we're going to go to a simple majority, and we're going to give you a big, heavy dose of what you're trying to propose. And you know what I would do if I was Mitch McConnell? Remind Chuck Schumer we're doing away with the filibuster because Barack Obama said it was a Jim Crow era relic.
Well, let me go to a Carlson quote. I think he sums it up very well. He basically said, but take 3 steps back. Imagine if some greasy politician showed up at your loved one's funeral and started throwing around stupid partisan talking points about Senate procedure. Can you imagine that? You would be shocked if that happened. You'd probably walk out, desecrating a funeral with campaign slogans. What kind of person would do that? But the Democrats in the audience didn't seem offended. They didn't blink. They cheered. It all seemed normal to them, and why wouldn't it? Political power is their religion. It's not out of place in a church. It's what they worship. People who will politicize a funeral will do anything. And they're trying to.
That's right.
And I think he hits it right on the head right there.
And that's why they're trying to censor Tucker Carlson. That's why they're trying to get him taken off the air. They don't like him. He's got 4 million people on any given night that are watching him. He's got the highest ratings in cable news in that time slot. That's why they want him silenced. That's why they have big tech, and we're going to cover it later in the week. They have big tech up in front of the House, all right? House or Senate, either way, okay? And they're basically saying, we censor. They're basically saying it. Who's trying to protect the American people when it comes to big tech and their censorship? They're real conservatives like Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump. They're trying to take power away from these people. But getting back to Tucker Carlson, they are itching to get something on that guy so that they could tell Fox News he needs to be fired. If Fox News fires Tucker Carlson, I think their ratings are going to get cut in half. I won't watch them anymore. And I like Laura Ingraham. I will not watch Fox News anymore ever again if they fire Tucker Carlson, because he's one of the only people out there. There's a few. He's one of the only people out there who's mainstream, I guess, if you want to call Fox News mainstream, that's actually broaching some of the topics that others, like Sean Hannity and others, will not touch. If they fire him, they're disgraceful, and I will not watch them. I dare say they're going to lose a lot of ratings if they fire Tucker Carlson. But
speaking of the Lewis funeral, I wanted to bring up a point because I think it's a very important one. Social distancing at that funeral, basically, this was the message that I got from it, is for the little people, and it's not for the elites. What do I mean by that? It's clearly a double standard, and let me elaborate. The funeral for civil rights icon John Lewis is yet another example of how our elites have turned the rest of us into second-class citizens. It is also an example of what they truly believe about the risks associated with the coronavirus. I say that by their actions. Over the past few months, we have read heartbreaking story after heartbreaking story about how the left-wing government has cruelly and unnecessarily either restricted the number of mourners at the funeral of a loved one or denied the right of anyone to attend funerals, including funerals of parents and spouses. Meanwhile, many of these very same left-wing government officials are encouraging, championing, and even joining countless and massive Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests. And I invite all of our viewers and listeners tonight to please Google images of this funeral, John Lewis, and see how these elites are completely ignoring the very rules which they're trying to impose on us with regard to social distancing. The hypocrisy is glaring. Frankly, it's embarrassing, and I hope America is watching.
Well, America is watching, all right? And that's why this reaction against social media, because this is our platform. Not just Joe and I, but many people. But real quick, before I make my point, Eddie's with us. Eddie, good seeing you, brother. Eddie says leftists do not recognize boundaries. Their drive for power and influence extends to all aspects of life. What they lack in common sense, they make up for in blind ambition. Eddie's been watching the front line with Joe and Joe. Of course he has. Eddie's a great supporter of the show. Bill's with us. Why can't we get as many Sunday worshipers in church as neo-Marxists can gather at a political protest? Unfortunately, Bill, that one falls on the bishops. Now, in Minnesota, in fairness, Joe and I covered it, a couple months ago? Bishop Hebda told the government, told the governor, your orders lack reason, therefore, your orders are unreasonable, therefore we're not going to follow them. Okay? I haven't heard any bad things, any repercussions, but the answer to your question is, Bill, this is not bashing, this is the truth. This falls on the bishops. My best friend Mike, who may be watching, his father died a couple weeks ago. Is a man I called Uncle Nicky. Okay, I knew him since the time I was 20 years old. Okay, and me and Mike have been friends, for the last 30 years. I could not go to his funeral. It was capped at, I think, 10 or 15 people. This is a man who I'm faithful Catholic. So is Joe. I want to pray for his soul. I want to pray for his soul at a Catholic mass, at a Catholic funeral mass, and I was not allowed to do so because Cardinal Tobin said I was not allowed to. Okay, so the problem then falls on the bishops. Quite frankly, they should look at, to give you an example, Cardinal Tobin needs to get Murphy on the phone, Governor Murphy of New Jersey, and say, listen, Governor, this has gone on too long. We'll wear masks and social distance, but we're going to go to as much capacity as we want with social distancing, probably about 50%. And if you don't like it, too bad, come and arrest us all. That's really what he should say.
But also, when it comes to this social distancing stuff, and clearly it's a double standard because all these elites are all hacking into a church. There is no basically 50 people or under, which I believe is the rule in New Jersey currently. It could be 100, but initially when they let us to go back to church, it was 50. Then they're giving us trouble with regard to going to the polls and voting. You can go to a box store. What I mean by a box store, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot. It's packed on any given Saturday. I go to pick up things from my house. It's packed. The line is 20 yards long. The parking lot is packed. If you go to the Jersey Shore, the boardwalk is packed. The beaches are packed. No one's social distancing. I have a town pool that's very close to my house. It's packed. It's packed on Saturday. No one's social distancing. Yet they're trying to take away a fundamental American right, which is to vote. And they're basically trying to replace it by voting by mail, which could be open to all types of trouble. Keep this in mind. There was a congressional vote in June in New York State. Do you know that they have not, it's now August, that they have not come to the victor?
Right.
Concluded on the victor yet? Is this what you want? Do you want to create like a gray situation or a blur with
yes, Joe, that's what the left wants.
So why do I bring this up? I personally think even with social distancing, make the line last longer. You have to wait. You have to only allow 50 people at a time in your polling place, whether it's town hall.
Joe, it's never packed. The polling places are never packed.
No, I've never
throughout
waited.
the day. People kind of straggle in 5 at a time, 6 at a
hours,
time.
or there's other ways you could handle it. But the point is, clearly, it's a double standard. Look at the images of this funeral. Look at the images of George Floyd's funeral. I'm just rattling off example after example, things that happen in my own town, in my own state. Yet they're basically saying to you that you can't go and vote because it's unsafe. But it's perfectly fine for Barack Obama to go into a packed church and eulogize John Lewis, and then to go to where he's buried at the cemetery, packed, everyone's hugging each other. George Floyd, perfectly fine to do that. Yet I can't go and vote at the poll. And I have to basically vote by mail, which opens up my vote, the voice of the American people.
Why do I have to trust my vote to a post office
and
worker?
That's another thing. It's just not sound. It's a double standard, and I hope America is watching. I mean, you're allowing these people to manipulate the voice of America. Do you realize that for 4 years, the Democratic Party, after Donald Trump was duly elected by the American people, and he was elected, the voice of the people, we spoke, whether you like it or not, he was elected. They have basically tried to negate your voice. This should be appalling.
Yes.
This is not an American idea. And then when you see these double standards and this hypocrisy, you do realize, you Democrats out there, that this can happen to you. You see, the tables turn sometimes. And I don't want them to happen to you, frankly, because I believe in the American idea, the American experiment. I believe in the Constitution. We're so blessed to be able to vote. Most countries don't have what we have with regard to that. And they have been coming up with hoax after hoax after hoax to basically take away your voice. And they're trying to do it again.
How much projection do we have to put up with? In other words, it was with the Russia hoax. It was them who colluded with the Russians, okay? So we know that everything is projection. Now their concern is, if Donald Trump loses on November 3rd, is he actually going to leave, or are we going to have to go there with the National Guard and force him out? That's what you people have been doing for 4 years. You've never accepted the results of the 2016 election, but then before the election, they kept saying, we have to worry. Nancy Pelosi, we have to worry if Donald Trump is actually going to accept the results of the election. You're the ones who didn't accept it, not them, not Donald Trump. And in the same way, listen, if you think in August, we're in August now, if you think there's not going to be fireworks between now and November 3rd, okay, Joe Biden is about to die. Now, I don't mean that, or I don't wish it, but I heard him the other day, okay, and I'm like, this guy's half dead. He's already half dead, okay? People are going to look at him, whether he goes in front of a camera and debates Donald Trump or not. People are going to look at him and they're going to say, because Donald Trump at least is going to be out on the campaign trail. Well, you have to question whether or not Joe Biden is going to be out on the campaign trail. And if he is, people, first of all, the mainstream media is not even going to cover it. They're going to pretend like Joe Biden is not even running. All right, it's all going to be negative against Trump. They can't put the camera on Biden because I'm not exaggerating. I thought the guy was going to die. He's talking like this, and it's good to be here at wherever it was. And then he says, "Oh no, we're not there. I know that. That was a joke." No, it's not, Joe. You're losing your marbles. All right. So what are they going to do if he's officially the nominee? Okay, I don't know when they actually officially make him the nominee. And all of a sudden, the polls start swinging, and Trump's up 55 to 45 or 49 to 41 or something like that. You don't think they're going to try to replace Joe Biden at the last minute and get a judge to go along with them? They'll do that in a second. Well, we can't, no. And the judge needs to say, no, Joe Biden's your nominee. Too bad. That's who's on the ballot, and that's who people are going to have their choice to vote for, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. But I expect fireworks. I expect out and out fireworks. Okay, between now and then, I don't expect this unless Trump wins, and I mean collectively. Florida, aside from the states he won, but Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, okay, Ohio. If he wins all those states and trounces Biden, maybe the Democrats will feel like they can't do something because they'll say, well, it's too much of a landslide. But in a close election where it comes down to 2 states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, let's say, expect the cheating.
I don't even know how you could possibly support Joe Biden with all the nonsense that's going on, as well as just in terms of, like Joe said, he's clearly not capable. I'm sorry. Joe Biden is not 100% with it. He's not capable. I'm sorry. You see, too many people they basically hang their hat on the fact they don't like Donald Trump. That's not a good enough answer with regard to not voting for him. I'm sorry.
But Joe, you know there's a lot of people like that.
Most people, if you ask them, why don't you like Donald Trump? I just don't like him.
I just don't like him.
I don't like him.
Well, what do you like about Joe Biden?
Well, what about policies? What about policies? I don't like him. I don't like him. All he cares about is money.
Can I tell them a story real quick?
Sure.
You know, during the cabinet, this is a perfect illustration of what Joe is talking about. Okay, there's a woman in our parish, or our former parish, that we used to go to. This was during the Kavanaugh hearing. My wife and I are sitting in a pew in front of her, and she's behind us. We're very friendly with her. Okay, I'm not disparaging her. I'm just illustrating a particular mindset. Okay, this was when Kavanaugh was getting berated by the left. Okay, which they should go to hell for what they did to him and his family. But my wife turned around to the woman and said, have you, and this was about 10 minutes before Mass, and said, did you see what they're doing to Judge Kavanaugh? Just like this, she goes, I don't like Trump. My wife said, no, I'm sorry. No, I wasn't asking you about Donald Trump, but Brett Kavanaugh is like, no, like that, like I'm seriously going, I don't like Trump. And that's all that was her only response.
That's not an adult.
She knew in her heart what they're doing to Kavanaugh was disgusting, but her only fallback position is, I don't like Trump.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, that's the problem. I'll be truthful with you. That's why they don't want to have a debate, frankly, because their positions are weak, and that's not a position. That's not a position. That's the position of, frankly, someone in grammar school fighting over a kickball game.
Right.
That's not. I don't like him. I don't want to be on his team.
Yeah, and if you disagree with me, I'm going to take my ball and go home.
I don't know what to say. To that, frankly.
Yeah. We got Rosemarie's joining us. Hi, Rosemarie. She's AOC is from a wealthy family, typical hypocrite, socialism for thee, but not for me. Don't leave this show, but if you get a chance, all you good people out there, Mike Knowles from a few months ago has a really good video on AOC. She is not from, she didn't grow up in the Bronx. Okay, I think she grew up in Yorktown Heights, someplace in Westchester, went to an exclusive school. But AOC, silver spoon. She knows nothing about the poor. Okay, Joe and I know something about the poor. AOC knows nothing about the poor. Bob's joining us. AOC and all Dems are disgusting. Agreed. And Bill, put up a blind resume of accomplishments, but don't label what the candidate is. That's, Bill, what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to say, Joe Biden's got all this experience, okay, but we don't need to hear from him, particularly in debates. So thanks for joining, Bill. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Fasillo and Joe Resinello. We are way into the breach. We're not only on, we used to only be on Facebook, Joe, but now we're all over the place. YouTube and a whole lot of other places, thanks to Jonathan Ross at Holy Faith Media. I did forget to mention that we do a radio show, Joe and I, once a week on the Crusade channel, which is always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Mike Church is one of the best radio guys around. It is a subscriber-based station. However, you could do a 30-day free subscription, a free trial. Joe and I get nothing from that, even if you do subscribe. Great, great channel. We recommend that to all of you. So anyway, Joe, where are we headed next?
Well, speaking of social distancing, I wanted to stick with this subject and kind of weave in the Black Lives Matter movement with it. Something recently came up in Washington, D.C. Black Lives Matter ignores risks to African Americans. The D.C. mayor also ignores her own restrictions. Here's the story. BLM protests haven't been curtailed by the pandemic. Despite a ban on gatherings of more than 50 people issued by the Democratic mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, BLM is organizing, in case you didn't know, this is about to go down, BLM is organizing a massive protest that may exceed 100,000 people, according to a permit application, which they filled out. It's billed as the March on Washington 2020. Protesters are instructed to gather at the Lincoln Memorial on August 28th of this month, the same date and location where Martin Luther King delivered his famous 1963 I Have a Dream speech.
So BLM and MLK, now they're going to actually try to equate those two, Joe Resinello?
It's very sad. But when I say that BLM ignores the risks to African Americans, this is something you may or may not know. Early statistics have shown that cases among African Americans accounted for 42% of all virus-related deaths. Believe it or not, the liberal media is against this rally. There are voices in the liberal media that are against this rally.
That's shocking to me, by the way. I'm really surprised at that.
The New York Times, this is what they had to say in early July. Black and Latino people have been disproportionately affected by the coronavirus in a widespread manner that spans the country throughout hundreds of counties in urban, suburban, and rural areas and across all age groups. Then the Washington Post directly addressed this particular rally. This is what they had to say. They said, no, bring the coronavirus from all over the United States on August 28th. This would endanger lives, especially lives of vulnerable people of color here. We have worked hard to reduce the impact of the coronavirus in D.C. We are trying to find safe ways for D.C. school children to engage safely and succeed in the new school year. We absolutely do not need the spike in suffering and death that would accompany this demonstration. Once again, you're seeing a double standard.
Mm-hmm.
The elites could do what they want to do, and you can't. You can't go to church. You can't do this. You can't do that. In some cases, you can't even go to your job. Today, I wanted to go to a bakery, and there was a sign on the door. It said we had to close because of the coronavirus due to financial difficulties. They're shutting their business down.
Right.
Countless businesses have been shut down because of this, yet they are justified to do whatever they want to do. This is another example. And here you have liberal voices. The Washington Post is hardly the National Review or the Federalist or Breitbart News. They're saying don't do this.
Right.
So what do I say to BLM on this? Do you care about the lives of the people who are going there with regard to the coronavirus if this is a real threat?
That's the key. Or do you actually know in your heart of hearts that coronavirus and the reaction to it is a lot of BS, okay? And all the rules they're trying to impose on us is a lot of BS. And you know nobody's going to get sick if they go to your rally. But real quick, Joe, we got a couple of comments I just wanted to address. Dennis said if the Democrats take control, they'll be targeting Catholics, which they have been and already are right now, Dennis. More Catholic churches will be burned. More statues of Mary will be desecrated. I would remind these people, Dennis, that if they want to do that, they're not believers. We know that. But if they want to desecrate statues of Mary, they ought to go look up at what happened to the Muslims at the Battle of Lepanto and then decide whether or not they want to mess with the Blessed Virgin Mary. Just throwing that out there. Also, good morning to Michael. Michael, good morning to you. It's nighttime here, but good morning. Gornai lives in D.C., okay? He lives down there. Now, Gornai has his finger on the pulse of all this stuff. Says, once again, double standards. The mayor tells folks during her news conferences, just because you could do certain activities during this pandemic doesn't mean you should. Right. So just because you have a right to protest BLM doesn't mean you should. So does the mayor think that should apply to BLM?
100,000 people gathering on the lawn of Washington, D.C., and they're worried about more than 50 people going to church. That applies to you. It doesn't apply to them.
Right.
Like I said, people should see through this. This is why you have to vote them out.
Oh, I can't wait till November. Listen, I look at it this way, Joe. Our faith is in Jesus Christ. So the bottom line is this. If on November 4th, Joe Biden's the president, I'm just going to gear up for persecution. But I do think, and here's a challenge, because Joe and I have said this before. Here is a challenge to all good people, not just Catholics, all people of goodwill. If God gives us a reprieve from these people for 4 more years and we blow that opportunity and don't change this country and put it back on a moral footing, meaning it's got to go back to adhering to God's law, then you want to know what? America be damned, and we'll just deal with the consequences. But God might just give us 4 more years because God is patient, all right? But we then have to really step up. We really have to step up in that 4 years and change the direction that this country has been on since the 1960s, at least, if not sooner than that.
But believe it or not, I just rattled off some liberal voices, particularly the Washington Post, that are against this march. You have a voice, which I wanted to point out, coming from Harvard. Believe it or not, Harvard Medical School. He's an infectious disease expert. His name is Dr. Renu Dillon. He calls the protests risky but necessary, just like working in a nursery home or a grocery store. This is the direct quote from Dr. Dillon from Harvard. He says, protesting against systematic injustice that has contributed directly to this pandemic is essential. He urges that people must demonstrate for the right to live, the right to breathe, the right to walk down the street without policing coming at you for no reason. Something tells me that Dr. Dillon won't be amongst the 100,000 people on the lawn in Washington, D.C. Once again, it applies to you. It does not apply to me. Frankly, to be honest with you, it shows how little they care for you as the person. It's all about the agenda. It's all about the bigger picture. It's all about getting Donald Trump out at any cost. If that means people die, if that means people get sick, if that means we destroy our cities, if that means we take down our police force and put people at risk and at danger, so be it. Whatever it takes, to get Donald Trump out. That's the message that I basically hear loud and clear, and I hope you do too, because that's exactly what they're saying, not by their voice, but by their actions. It's perfectly clear.
And Joe, this is not a shock. This is not something new. Communists have been saying things and doing things like this since the October Revolution of 1917, when questioned about the amount of people that were dying in Russia at the time. Lenin's attitude was, you can't make an omelet unless you crack a few eggs. Of course, but his head is not going to be one of the eggs that gets cracked. It'll be somebody else's head that gets cracked. This is what communists and socialists do. Why do people bury their hand in the sand and not take the lessons of history? These people are doing nothing new. BLM, Antifa, all of them are doing nothing new. But you do have to understand, you have to look at history and read history so you could see their tactics. You could see their strategies. You could see the way they try to bully you and me and all the good people out there who are listening to us in social media. They try to bully you, then they want to disarm you. Then they want to indoctrinate you, and if they can't indoctrinate you, they'll indoctrinate your children. We cover that 1,000,000 times on this show. Indoctrination of children through the education system. Why do we have to wait to give them power before we realize we're making a mistake? We did that with Obama in 2008. And in 2010, the Republicans swept in and took control of the House and Senate and kept it till 2018 to put a check on Obama. Don't do it this time, because I'll tell you what, this 2 years of Joe Biden, if he gets elected, this will be, and especially if they do away with the filibuster, in that 2 years, that filibuster is the only check we have if they have the presidency, the House, and the Senate. Okay, that filibuster is all we will have. If they do away with that, you better gird your loins, as St. Paul said. Okay, because we're in a lot of trouble. They are going to hit us with every atrocity in their playbook, and they'll do it with a simple majority in the Senate, and Joe Biden will sign it into law. Do you want that? And I think the answer should be no, and for all the reasons that Joe and I go over every single week on this show.
Let's talk a little bit about the doxers that were censored this week. I think it's important to cover. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that, because it was an absolute and utter disgrace on a number of fronts. As we all know, a group of doctors basically claimed Americans are being deceived about the coronavirus. A video which was shared by Breitbart showed a press conference on Capitol Hill by America's frontline doctors, a group challenging the mainstream narrative of COVID-19. Dr. Simone Gold suggested that there are thousands of physicians around the country who share their perspective. Very interesting, and we're going to name a few of them. Dr. Gold, this is what she had to say. Americans are riveted and captured by fear at the moment. We are not held down by the virus as much as we are being held down by this spider web of fear. Another doctor at that press conference, Stella Emanuel, she trumpeted hydroxychloroquine, an experimental treatment for the virus. This is what Dr. Emanuel had to say. And the result has been the same. I put them on hydroxychloroquine. I put them on zinc. I put them on Zethromax, and they are all well. Opponents on social media called Dr. Emanuel fraud, by the way. One of the arguments was her involvement in Christian ministry.
Ooh, that's a sin.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, this is a disgrace on a number of fronts. One, let's talk about big tech for a minute. They took it down. Why can't we discuss this? Why can't we have a discussion? Why is this bad data? Why would you rather listen to Rob Reiner and not listen to a group of doctors?
Because she's
at least
Christian.
Entertain the conversation. Immediately taken down. That should be red flag number one to the American people, right there, if you ask me. Second of all, these are just that. They are doctors. They're doctors, which means they went to medical school. And it's not just one. There are a number of doctors. You may remember Dr. Erickson from Bakersfield, California. He went on social media months ago and questioned the narrative. And his video was taken down. This is what Dr. Erickson had to say. He said, basically, our California, talking about the mandate, the lockdown mandate, he basically said our suicide hotlines are up by 600%. Our spousal abuse and different areas of alcoholism are on the rise. He's basically saying that the lockdown has done more harm than good. That was his view. They immediately took that down. They didn't even entertain the conversation.
Right.
Then you have a doctor out of Santa Monica, California. He's been on the news recently. His name is Dr. Bob Hamilton. He's speaking in favor of reopening the schools. He's immediately squashed.
Right.
Again, what does that tell me? What it tells me is this. We're allowing the social media giants once again to decide what is authentic science and what is not.
Well, it's like Mama Bear says in the combox. Where did Bill Gates get his medical diploma? Yeah, that's right. Where did the CEO of Google or YouTube? Where did they get there? What makes them scientists? They're not scientists. They're taking down videos of people who are scientists, but they're not scientists who fall in line with the narrative. This is what they do. They convince you that if you argue with them, you're anti-science. But when scientists argue with them, what did they say about this doctor? I think she's from Nigeria.
Fraud.
She's a fraud. You want to know why? Because she's a Christian. Ooh, I guess that same Christian faith, Catholic faith, truly, okay, about 800 years ago, that developed the scientific method and gave it to Western civilization, I guess they were disqualified from having done so. So this woman's a Christian with a Christian worldview, which gave birth to science in Western civilization, but she's disqualified from doing science. You people are a joke.
And also, not for nothing, she treated, I think, I've heard different accounts. I've heard 300, 1,300. She's treated people with this basic mix of medicines and had success on it. So why don't we explore it? I'm just talking rationally. Why don't we entertain the conversation? It's taken down. By the way, this is what Facebook had to say with regard to them taking it down. This is coming from Andy Stone. He's a Facebook spokesman. He said, "We've removed this video for sharing false information about cures and treatments of COVID-19. By the way, the company did not specify what portion of the video it ruled to be false information, who it consulted with regard to making that ruling, and on what basis it was made." So, like, once again, who is Andy Stone in Facebook to question a doctor that has treated hundreds of patients and had success? I mean, I thought it was about science. By the way, that video, there were 17 million views of it, and it was only on Facebook for 8 hours. At one point, there were 185 concurrent viewers.
That's why it was taken down.
And this is my point. We are allowing elites, we are allowing these people, the oligarchs, to take away the voice of the people. By the way, that's what socialism does. Think about this whenever you think about socialism. The larger the government, the smaller the person. These people retain their power. They're just going to take the power away from us, and they throw you a crumb. They throw you a crumb to appease you. They think that that's enough. They're above it because they're elites. They're just that. It does not affect them. But here we go again. They're telling us how to think. They're saying that this is bad science. Once again, who are you, Andy Stone of Facebook? And you know something? To put a finer point on the conversation, if Americans continue to let so-called experts and media personalities make their decision, the great American experiment of this constitutional republic, this democracy, it ceases. It's over. People, let's wake up. Let's wake up. Get your head out of your cell phone.
Right. That's
and
why.
Start waking up and looking around and see what's going on.
Right.
I mean, gosh, I'll be honest with you. All due respect to Democratic Party, I don't know how one person votes for them.
Well,
never mind wins like the presidency. I don't know how one person can vote for them. The nonsense.
Well, I'll say I don't know how one reasonable person could vote for that party. What do we always say on the show about debate, right? If someone doesn't want to debate, that should tell you all you need to know, that they're not very confident in their position. Because if I have a position, let's say if somebody said, I'll debate you, let's say a Protestant said, I'll debate you on your Catholic faith. I'd say, okay, what's the topic, and I do my research. I'm confident enough, and I will defend the Catholic faith. If I say, no, I'm not going to debate, you know what I am? I'm not very confident in my point of view. Okay, I'm not very confident in my ability to either in my ability to present my side of the debate, or I actually don't believe the BS that I'm trying to convince people of. Eddie makes it, I'm alluding to Eddie's comment, who said Team Apocalypse only knows how to smear and censor. If a media outlet was actually interested in the truth, it would sponsor a debate or roundtable discussion with the medical professionals, with medical professionals with different opinions about COVID-19. Eddie, you're talking too much common sense, brother. That's why they're taking down videos of obvious medical professionals. They don't want to debate. You know what happens if they debate? Take hydroxychloroquine. You know what they're going to find out? Tens of thousands of people, if not more, have gotten well because of the protocol of hydroxychloroquine. But they don't want you to know that.
And Donald Trump talked about that months ago, probably from a doctor that probably made that suggestion, because obviously he has the best medical, treatments and open to mankind. He's the president of the United States, plus he's wealthy. I would imagine he has the best doctors taking care of him. He said this months ago. He was mocked.
Yeah.
And here you have doctors, a doctor who said she's treated hundreds of patients and she's had success. Now, that doesn't mean it's a cure-all for everything. I'm not that naive. But what I'm saying is, why can't we have that discussion? Like Eddie just said, why don't we have a roundtable discussion? Why don't we explore it? Nope, take it down.
Right.
It's false.
And by the way, that
says who?
And Joe, that goes for, just so you know, just to bring it up to more general tactics of the left. I'm going to give you just a quick hit list of things that they refuse to debate. They're not going to debate evolution. They're not going to debate the cause of homosexuality. They're not going to debate climate change. Okay. They're not going to debate these. What you always get is, no, it's settled science. And somebody says, well, I'm a scientist and I disagree. It's not settled science. We need to debate. They won't debate those things. And now, given there's an election in November, they're unwilling to debate COVID-19 and possible cures, or at least shed light on the truth of this pandemic. So you're at the front line with, I'm sorry, Joe.
No.
You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello are way into the breach. We got a lot of people that are with us today. We'd like to welcome all you new joiners and new audience members. We hope you're enjoying the show. We have a bunch of interviews, and every video we've ever done is on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. Please like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell, do all that fun stuff. We have an interview with Bevelyn Beatty tomorrow afternoon. That'll probably be streamed on Tuesday night. Now, watch out for that, because that's a good one. You want to know why? Because that's a black conservative. Ooh, don't tell the left there's black conservatives out there. They might come banging down. The stormtroopers might come banging down your door. So anyway, do we have any?
Yeah, we have one more.
We got one more story that we think is very. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I think this is a good one. And
let's say hi to Jimmy real quick. Jimmy's joining us. It's very sad that those in higher authority put religion as a controversial matter. I believe God forbids this. Why are they burning the churches and statues? Well, they're burning the churches and statues to their, at their own peril, Jimmy. But thanks for joining. So where are we headed, Joe?
We're going to Seattle. I want to bring up some comments that the chief of police of Seattle recently made. We've covered her in the past. Her name is Carmen Best. She's an African-American woman, by the way. I want to make that point very clear. Because many times, sadly, people bucket African Americans that they can't think any differently than the narrative that they're told to think by the Democratic Party. She seems to be a free thinker based upon a lot of the comments she's made. Basically, what has happened in Seattle is they've taken away the police's. The city council had a vote, and they've taken away what they call less lethal tools from the police department. What I mean by that is pepper spray. Pepper spray is used by police to control violent crowds, violent mobs, and you're seeing that. As we all know, that there was what was that Chaz?
Chaz or Chop?
Yeah, they had
Chaz then became Chop.
Yeah, it was like basically a community within a community, which was basically controlled by.
It was
the
a
mob.
communist takeover of 6 blocks of Seattle, is what it was.
And people, two young boys died, a 19-year-old. I think both of them were teenagers, by the way. 4 people were shot in that particular area of the city.
I thought it was peaceful.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was, again, narratives. We were told it was peaceful.
So now the police this has been taken away from them, voted by the city council. They cannot use pepper spray. This is what the chief of police had to say. This is the chief of a police of a major city in this country.
Now swish this around in your mouth like a fine wine and think about this.
Carmen Best, this is what she said. She said, there are riots. The city council banned the use of pepper spray and other crowd control agents. So now we have no ability to safely intercede to preserve property in the midst of a large and violent crowd. I'm going to break that down for you in a shorter version. Now, what she's basically saying, if you have a business in Seattle and there's a riot, you are on your own.
How's that?
This is a wealthy American city, and the chief of police is saying that. And what she also said, she wrote a letter to the city council, and this is what she said in the letter to the city council. This is the chief of police. She said, Seattle should expect, this is as a result of their decision to take away less lethal tools from the police department. Seattle should expect more property damage, arson, looting, and attempts to injure additional officers. I can't believe what's going on.
This is America?
And that's why I say, honestly, and I say this objectively, I do not know how any clear-headed person can vote for the Democratic Party.
And what did we say a couple weeks ago?
I'm sorry.
If Joe Biden wins, don't think this is getting better. This is going to get worse, is it not?
Oh, because basically you're empowering them.
Right.
If you vote for Joe, first of all, Joe Biden will not lift a finger to stop any of these.
And that's what's going to make them feel emboldened, empowered. They're going to look, Joe. The cities, just because Joe Biden gets elected, doesn't mean that the cities are going to get have been torn down. No, they're going to have carte blanche now to go and tear down the rest of these cities. That's what they're going to do. And who's going to be most affected by it?
The poor. The poor, because we've covered this in the past. I mean, in the very beginning of the riots with George Floyd, I read an article, and it was basically speaking about a pastor in the south side of Chicago. And basically what he's saying, he works with the poor. South side of Chicago is poor. It's where the White Sox play baseball. I've actually gone to a game there. It's a very, very bad neighborhood, kind of similar to the Bronx where the Yankees play. Anyway, he basically said those riots put his work back 2 decades.
2 decades.
When you burn poor neighborhoods down, businesses leave and they don't return. Businesses choose to invest in a neighborhood. They choose to invest in a neighborhood because they see a potential to make money. If you're going to burn my business down, has nothing to do with prejudice. It has everything to do with I'm investing in your neighborhood because I think I could profit. They're not going to return. So what does that mean? You're not going to have CVS's. You're not going to have places to shop. You're not going to have services. What do I mean by that? Plumbers aren't going to go into your neighborhood because they're not safe. They're not going to park their truck outside of your house. You're not going to get services from electricians. Any type of like basic, you're not going to see, you'll see limited bus lines going through your neighborhood.
How are you going to get a bus driver that wants to drive through that neighborhood?
This is what I'm saying. It ultimately affects the poor. And these are the people they quote unquote say they're championing. I, once again, hope you're seeing through this. And this is why I say, with all due respect, I don't know how any clear thinking and logical and objective person can vote for the Democratic Party right now. You see, too many people prescribe to tribalism. As Tucker Carlson said about Barack Obama at John Lewis's funeral, politics is their religion. They put on their tribal hat. They don't see anything else. They can't see anything wrong. And if something's wrong, they turn away from it and they pull that lever anyway. Joe and I have brought up countless double standards on this show. Hypocrisy beyond understanding. How the Democratic Party is leveraging the mob to basically manipulate people and this election, to bully you into voting for a man who's not capable and fully with it to run this country. And yet there are many people in America that support their platform, a platform of violence, a platform that basically wants to kill babies in the womb up until the moment of birth.
Right.
I don't, frankly, I'll be honest with you, I don't get it. I don't get it, because I'll be truthful with you. I have voted for Republicans. I wouldn't vote. If Republicans did this, that's when I stop voting.
Yep.
I'm done. See, I don't prescribe to politics as my religion. I vote for the candidate who I think will be the best for this country. And clearly Donald Trump is the best candidate. I'm sorry.
And he's shown that.
And he has flaws, but he is the best candidate. Their platform stinks.
Right.
And I'm giving you that this statement from the chief of police from Seattle. And you know something? She's a black woman. And I'm willing to bet that she has probably voted in her life for Democrats. If I was going to make a bet.
You think she's feeling a little disgusted right now?
Her people are put in danger.
Her responsibility is to the police officers.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what I mean by her people. She is the chief of police.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. We have to realize, the comm box is full of people talking about double standards and everything else. The people that are going to be left without police protection, those are the poor people. And those are the people, by the way, the working class business owners that pay taxes and who are entitled to police protection. All police protection, okay? Whatever it takes to make sure that their person and their property and their businesses are protected. It's those people who are paying. The rich people that impose this, they're in the suburbs, Joe. They don't pay the price. So anyway, that's a good place to leave it. We're going to talk about cities tomorrow with Bevel and Beatty. And keep your eye out for that on the front line with Joe and Joe. I just want to give a quick shout out before we go to some people who I have not seen before. Diana's with us, and EHMD in Mexico. Nice to have found you on YouTube. Nice to have you here. Thank you very much. Donna's with us, and Barbara and Philip. So thank you, Philip. He said, good show. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Get the front line with Joe and Joe. Remember, angrycatholic.com. Paul and Kristen Chiacha, they talk about all things Catholic, and they're two great human beings. They have great shows. So you could Google them and you'll find them. They have a website, and on the website, they have all their other links to iTunes and everything else. And you could buy their T-shirts, which I did. So Angry Catholic, remember, take a look at the Crusade channel, Mike Church's channel out of New Orleans. And see what you think. You can do a 30-day free trial subscription to see what it's all about. Mike Church is phenomenal, and so is the rest of his lineup. Joe and I are on there once a week for a 3-hour show, which is exhausting, but we do it anyway because it's fun. And yeah, so follow us on Facebook and YouTube, like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell. All the things you could do to help would be tremendously appreciated. And most importantly, keep us in your prayers. And finally, remember, we have a GoFundMe page where you could drop in a couple bucks. You could find us at Support the Front Line with Joe and Joe. You can find us on GoFundMe. And as always, remember, until next week, our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation, it's going on everywhere. We'll see you next time.